All right, we are
Beauty.
live. We are live with Sam Tanner, Olympian, 1500-meter runner. Sam, thank you first of all so much for joining us on this Thursday morning. I hear you've just been out for a run.
Yeah, Brad. Thanks for having me. Just did a little bit of it's almost like a double. I've got a big day today, so I decided to cram one of my runs in before I jump on the interview with you. But such a nice day outside, and I'm sure you know that too because you're in the same city.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, we were only probably about 10K apart or even less than that. And as I said to you before, we went on live. We've got to organise a time to catch up in person, so we must
Yeah,
do that real
definitely.
soon. But look,
Can't jump on
first of all, I
Slack
think I
again.
better. Yeah, first of all, I think I better introduce you. I mean, for those of you who don't know who Sam Tanner is, because some people in the US might not, or you probably should, but Sam is an Olympian. He ran the 1500 in the Olympics. He's also run 3:31 and change in the Commonwealth Games final, which is a super quick time. You are, now correct me if I'm wrong here, Sam, but you broke the 4-minute mile in high school. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I was 18, just 18. Yeah. My last year of
So
high school.
that's incredible. So broke the 4-minute mile in high school, and there's not too many people that have done that. And then you also you've been over to the US and you held, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but you held the 1500-meter collegiate record for a little bit. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, the indoor 1500 record.
Yep.
Well, actually, technically, it was faster than the outdoor as well. So yeah, I guess both at the same time.
Awesome.
But yeah, they ran it indoors in February last year.
Yeah, so that's incredible. So went over to the US, was in the University of Washington, and broke the collegiate record and held that for a little bit as well. So, man, it's just a pleasure to have you on, and I can't wait to pick your brain and just to hear a little bit about your background. And then, if there's anybody listening from the Run Experience community or anybody else, and you want to pop in some questions, we can thread those into the chat as we go on. So if you have any questions for an Olympic runner, you want to know anything, what he eats, his training, then please just pop on and put that into the comments, and we can ask those as we go through. But
Definitely.
first of all, Sam, look, I really would love to hear a little bit about how you got started, a little bit about your upbringing in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and what got you started into running, and when you sort of discovered that you were pretty good at it. I'd love to hear that story. So take it away, Sam.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brad. So I'll start from the beginning. Beginning before me, my parents were pretty fast. They both loved sport, and mum played touch for New Zealand, touch rugby that is, and my dad did some local triathlons. My mum did some athletics, some track and field when she was going through high school, and so I think the passion behind athletics was there from way back. And so when I was about around 5 years old, they got me and my siblings into just like the local club athletics down in Papamoa. And that was real fun. It was just not focused on anything specific. Just we got to throw discus and do high jump and long jump and do all the other events, and so it was just a lot of fun, and I got to be there with my mates and do that sort of stuff. Then fast forward a few years, I started to win some races, and I was always super competitive and I always wanted to win. And so I won a couple of school cross countries. And then some teachers are like, you should do these races. And then I found out that Ames Games was coming up. And Ames Games in New Zealand is a intermediate, what do they call that in America? I don't know. Intermediate 11 and 12-year-olds race that is like a mini Olympics, really, And they have a bunch of different sports and events. But anyway, I did the cross country, and it was nationwide. A bunch of schools came up, kids from different schools all across the country came over and up to Tauranga, where I live, and raced that. And that was the first time I won essentially a national title, and that kind of sparked my interest in running, and especially middle distance / distance running. And I was like, I quite like this whole winning thing. And so, that's how it all started.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really cool. And so from there, did you just keep progressing? You just kept entering more races, and you enjoyed that taste of winning, and it just sort of spiraled from there. Is that how it sort of went on?
Yeah. I didn't really train that much. I always said to mum, "Oh, mum, will like get out of bed, like let's go for a run." When I was 12 and 13 years old, I was like, "Let's just go for a run." I always thought I was doing a 6K loop, but around the block, but it was only 4Ks, and so I was actually training less than I thought I was even, and I was only doing maybe 20Ks a week, maybe probably less than that, like 3 runs. But I was playing touch rugby and other sorts of sports. But yeah, I won a couple of cross country races. One broke the New Zealand record in the Ames Games in year 7, and then won it again in year 8, and then continued with cross country, and athletics kind of took a back seat for the few years while I was in high school, especially the first few years because I loved surfing, and so it was pretty cool to just let my fun sports take over for a few years, and because surfing really or athletics got in the way of surfing, which was my biggest passion at the time. And I still love it now, but I think the job's more important than the hobby in some ways. But it's good balance. Yeah. So sorry. I got to the last 2 years of high school, and was looking around for some coaches. And Brad did a long run with you, mate. And remember you telling me how to teaching me to run slow. And that was something that's always stuck with me. So that's always been awesome. But anyway, I ended up landing with Craig Kirkwood, and he's a coach over in Beretta over there in Otamoto, I guess. And so yeah, our relationship started when I was year 12, so at 17 years old. And yeah, he took me from there, and I won a national New Zealand secondary school cross country in year 12.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I think that brings up a whole host of questions. What you're just saying there. I think the first thing I'd like to ask you is about balance. There's a lot of young athletes that get pushed into sports quite early on in their development, and get put along pathways. And for you, I really like the fact that you're saying that you were surfing, you're doing a lot of other things before you really went into athletics sort of full time. How important do you think that is for your development as an athlete and a person, to actually keep that balance and make sure that you're having fun along that journey? I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I growing up by the beach, it's been important to me to get in the water and to feel nature under your feet, and like go swimming, like what you do, and go swimming in no wetsuit and get cold and get uncomfortable and enjoy the outdoors. And I think that's been a big part of who I am, and what makes me holistically a better athlete. And so, going back to the fundamentals, one of the papers I learned about in uni was like physical literacy skills, and I think that as a developmentally as a youngster, I think it's really important to develop those physical literacy skills, whether it's riding a bike or surfing or running around playing tag or climbing on a playground. And I think a lot of kids nowadays miss out on some of those skills just because of early specialization. And I think that's one thing that Craig and I and the family have done well with me, is that I've had that balance. So socially, emotionally, everything, I've been ready to just attack running when it comes down to it. And so that's been a super cool experience, and I think that it's quite important to have that balance for so many kids, because otherwise you get things like burnout, and they just stop liking the sport by the time they're 20, and you're like, man, I've got so many more years in the sport, and it's a great sport, so keep doing it.
Hey, that's fantastic advice, I think, for anybody. I mean, there's so many kids that I'm seeing these days that are just they're specializing far too early and missing out on, as you say, that physical ability to do other things, and maybe give yourself a little bit of an X factor, and also just to keep yourself fresh and hungry. Because look,
Definitely.
One of the things I loved about you, Sam, especially at the Com Games, is just every time you went onto the track, you just looked like you were full of joy. You looked excited to be there. And when you finished 6th in the final and ran one of those, that 3:31 and change, as you stated, you're the happiest sixth place finisher in the games. But that joy, that exuberancy was just infectious, and it just, look, we're also, as you know, we're also proud of you, Sam. But I think the way that you approach your running is refreshing, and I think a lot of people can learn from that. So yeah, I think what you just said there was fantastic. I think more young kids do need to make sure that they're enjoying life and getting into a whole range of different sports and keeping that joy alive before they super specialize.
Yeah, exactly. I think like sport's such a blessing to be able to do, and so I'm like, I know that for me now, I'm so fortunate to be in the position that I'm in, and it's such a blessing to be able to run every day, and my legs be under me, and just have that freshness of life. And yeah, like, what are you doing if you're not enjoying your job, like, or enjoying life? You change something, man. Like, at least change your attitude. And so yeah, I'm like, what's to hate? I get to be outside. My wife's a teacher, and she teaches every day, and so she is grinding away from 7 in the morning till sometimes 6 at night, and you're like, man, the school hours aren't even that long, but that's what it takes. So a lot of jobs are like that, and so I'm fortunate to be outside every day and enjoying nature.
Yeah, look, your attitude of gratitude is beautiful, Sam. It really is. And as I say, I think you've got a lot to teach a lot of other people. So that's really, really cool. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your US experience when you went over to the University of Washington. Why didn't you carry on with that? You basically became a professional runner for Puma quite young. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how that all developed? One of the things that I'd really like to know is, because you had such a great relationship with your coach, Craig Kirkwood, went over to that collegiate system. How did you guys manage that? And then why did you choose ultimately to come back to New Zealand?
Yeah, that's a long answer, and I'll break it down into pieces for you. But essentially, we'll go backwards. The decision for me to come back was like a combination of things. The first thing was educationally. I had 2 more years left at University of Washington, plus a degree, plus a postgraduate to make my degree like applicable and actually be able to work in the area I got a degree in New Zealand. So that's 3 more years of study total, or I could come back and do 3 years of study in New Zealand and have a degree. And so either way, it was going to be 3 years. And I'm like, oh, okay, do I make money for 3 years, or do I stay in university for 3 years? And, the second thing is I loved being home. And I found out that, when I'm happy, I race way better. And Craig has a saying, happy Sam is fast Sam. And so, doing that just made a lot of sense. And then, yeah, what was the third thing I was going to say? I guess an opportunity like having Puma come along, especially racing post Olympics, was almost too good to pass up, because you never know what's going to happen next year. Like, I don't know, I could have got hurt in my final year of college, and because I'm a Kiwi and I'm a New Zealand athlete, I don't have as much kind of leverage in the running market as some Americans do, and so my risk of not even getting a contract, I'm like, oh, I could take the contract while it's there and while the opportunity presents itself. So that was kind of the 3 pulling factors towards that. But I really, really enjoyed my time in the US, and I wouldn't change it for anything, because it was such a valuable experience, completely different to anything I experienced in New Zealand. They've just, the amount of love that they have for the sport and the commitment that they have for the sport is incredible, and that's something that I've like taken on board myself as well. And just all the different bits of advice and learnings that I did, whether it be nutrition or I got a bit fat my first year, and so that was a big change. I got from 60 to 70 kilos. I came 231st in the cross country NCAA champs. And so that was a bit of a learning curve from near becoming, worse than like 3rd ever in a race and just getting smoked. So that was fun, but it was definitely a challenge. And then you've got the physical learnings, such, like going to the gym and having a training environment like that. It's pretty awesome to be a part of.
Yeah, I bet. How did you navigate the fact that as you went over there, I suppose from a big fish, and then to maybe a small fish, in a big pond over there, and you're part of a group and maybe didn't have as much individual attention for coaching as you were back here. How did you navigate that?
Look, the small fish, big fish thing is like, yeah, there was definitely a challenge because I'm like, I want to, especially in cross country, because in track I was still good enough where like my talent would, let me win races. Couple of indoor races that I won. I think I won my first indoor race. I did a K in like 220, I think, and or 221 maybe. And I won my first indoor race, which was so exciting. I was just ready to attack it, But when it came to cross country, I'm versing guys who are like 26 and have been doing 100-mile weeks for 4 years, and I'm like sitting there like I'm doing like 80 k's a week and like maybe like pushing 80 k's a week. Like I went over to university doing like 60 k's a week, and or less, even 50 k's a week. And so me matching those guys, I was like, whoa, and over my head a little bit. But in terms of coaching, Andy was really good, and I feel like he gave me a lot of specific attention and dedication to just like specializing our program and that program around me as best he could. And so I always felt looked after in that respect, which is really, really good, and I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Oh, there's obviously heaps of lessons that you took from that, and it's obviously, look, it's obviously worked. The pathway that you've taken has obviously worked because of the fact that you've been able to run that 3:31.
Yeah.
So I suppose I'd love to hear a little bit about that race. So for the listeners that aren't aware, you got to the Commonwealth Games final where you were racing some big guns in the sport, and you
Yeah.
managed to pull out. Was it a 3-second PB? Over a 3-second PB in
Yeah.
that particular race. So can you just take us through that race? Did you have any idea that you were going to be able to run that fast?
Yeah, no. The answer is no, really. I thought I was capable of running 3:33, maybe 3:32 on a really good day. If everything went well, 3:32 would have been the way I would have liked to race. And I wanted to be competitive and put myself in it for the win, but I knew realistically if it was a 3:29 race, which it ended up being, then I probably wasn't quite there yet. In a couple of years, I think I'll definitely, or next year maybe even, I'll be in that position to be able to run a 3:29 off, a couple rounds. But so I was like, I was just hoping that it was either fast as, so I get a mean PB, or slow and put myself in it to win it. And so coming off Worlds, I had a good build up to Worlds, a real strong build up to Worlds, but I hadn't felt like I peaked quite at the right time for Worlds. And so I knew going into Com Games that, the body was ready to run fast. And so, but I still only thought it was 3:33, 3:32. And so my mind's still blown. I can't believe how fast I ran. I actually met John Walker the other day, and we went up to his place in Auckland. And first of all, it was such an honor to meet him, and he's such a legend. But I've run faster than him now, and
Yeah.
he was a world record holder, Olympic champion, and I was like, wow, that's just incredible. But I still come sixth, and that still humbles me a little bit. Like it's still a sixth place getter, but there's nothing for me not to be proud of in that sense, which is just it's pretty cool. And so going through the race, sorry, you can pick apart this answer for me in a second. But going through this race, I went out hard expecting for people to settle, and they just didn't settle. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so I just relaxed and just like started praying. I was like, God, I need some strength here. I need to just help me to relax and help me to run smoothly and fast. And I just did exactly that. And my body there's like a peace that came over me. I just shut off and just looked at the back of the person in front of me and just ran. And then with like 150 meters to go, just hit the gas and just sent it. And I was lucky I had a kick left, and I passed like 6 guys, which was great.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I was so stoked.
That's amazing. I mean, so much to take out of that little piece there. I mean, first of all, for the people that are viewing that don't know who John Walker is, John Walker is one of New Zealand's greatest athletes. He was the first man ever in history to break the 350 mile, held the world record for the mile as well. And now Sam Tanner has run faster over 1,500 meters than John Walker. So that's just uber exciting. And I think the second
Yeah,
thing there is the fact that, you know, what you said about that race, how you went out hard and then just try to relax and stay calm and just focus on what was ahead of you. And that's some amazing advice for you know, all runners out there, isn't it? I think a lot of the time
definitely.
you can get so caught up and get so stressed, and that can just create that kind of it can create a lot of tightness, and if you get that, you're not going to relax into that. So I think that's a really cool message just for everyone, and for anyone that is listening, who's viewing this, then please drop some questions into the comment box. If you want to ask an Olympian anything, then just drop it in, and we'll ask some questions at the end of a conversation, because this is an opportunity to ask one of basically the world's fastest runners at the moment some questions about his running and any little tips that he might have. So if you want to pick an Olympian's brain, now is the time. So definitely get some of those questions in. The other question that I wanted to ask was, and you've sort of already touched on it, is your progression from when you were a younger runner to now. You didn't try and do big miles too early. You said that your coach and your family and yourself came together with a long-term plan, not to burn you out. And you made sure that you actually kept your miles, your kilometers per week pretty low, really, and just built up. So could you tell us a little bit about that and how that plan came into place?
Yeah, totally. I guess Craig's one of Craig's philosophies is just to, it's about the long-term development, and where I want to be in, when I'm 24 or 25 is going to be the most important. Like, am I going to? I've always wanted to peak at Paris. So in 2024, and so that'd be a pretty awesome opportunity to be kind of maybe reach my mileage peak, maybe, or base strength peak, and then continue to build on that. But anyway, I started running, when I was 17, and Craig gave me, I don't even think I had an hour long run. I think my long run was like 40 minutes. And for me, that was like, 40 minutes, like so long, so much time running. And, now my long run's an hour and 45 minutes. And that's a big difference because you cover a lot more ground. But, 40 minutes for me back then was huge. And so I'm not even sure what my weekly mileage was. I think when I ran 358 for the mile, I think I was only running 25, 30 miles a week, which was like nothing, and so a lot of kids are doing sub fours, but they're running 80 miles a week or 90 miles a week, and you're like, wow, like, dude, you're in high school, where's the growth? And so Craig just tried to, or we all tried to just maximize my potential at each stage of growth and each stage of my progression. And so, I've moved up across the years and over the years. And so now I'm kind of sitting at, what is it in miles? I guess 80 miles a week in base phase now. So 130K, about that. And so that's been a big step for me this year and over the last month and a bit. And so it's been challenging on the body, but it's been really good, and I think I can feel the benefits already starting to kick in, and it's just the natural progression until for the next year.
You bring up a really good point, because over the last 20 or 30 years, I've seen heaps of people peak in high school and run really fast times, and then they just disappear from the scene. And I think what's happening is people are pushing and burning out, getting stale or getting injured, and not having that long-term plan. And I think what Craig Kirkwood has done, with you and your family, it's just brilliant. It's just about making sure you are maximizing your potential for the journey, for that growth. And it's just so smart. And it'd be really good if more people did that, rather than pushing so early in their careers and then losing the love for the sport, and you see we got too many people dropping out, and it's not a good thing. So it's just
No,
really
and
refreshing. Yeah, really
yes,
refreshing to hear your take on it.
it's such a great sport, and it's kind of like going back to what I said before about the balance. Like, if you don't have the balance, then of course you're going to burn out. Like, if your life's not balanced, you're going to burn out in anything. So, if you do apply that same philosophy with sport, you're just going to suffer. Like, it's kind of, to me, it makes a lot of sense, but yeah, no, it's good to have balance.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now, the other thing I was wanting to talk to you about was your relationship with Hayden Wilde. I mean, Hayden Wilde is an Olympic bronze medalist in triathlon, and you guys have done a little bit of training together under Craig Kirkwood's tutorage. So, how do you find has that been a really beneficial relationship for you, having someone to be able to push you, and also he's another great Kiwi bloke, good sense of humour. You guys seem to get on really well. So how much of a benefit has that been in your growth over the last couple of years?
Oh, the benefit's been incredible. Over COVID, we trained together almost every day. Or at least every workout we did almost every workout we did together. And that was just so beneficial for me and for him, I think, because winning triathlon comes down to the run a lot of the time. And so for me to be able to help his speed and him help my endurance was just like the biggest trade-off relationship we could have ever had. And so I feel like Craig's just done so good to make us, thrive off each other's strengths. And so, I'll be doing 2K reps and he'll be pushing me, and then we will be doing 400 reps and I'll be pushing him, And so sometimes I'll be chasing him down or he'll be hanging on the back, and other times we'll be doing a tempo session together and I'm struggling because we get into that, 15, 18-minute mark and I'm like, oh, we're absolutely cranking here. And then he's just the strongest athlete I've ever met in my life. He's actually incredible. And so to be able to train with him is just outstanding. We just get such quality. But it's the other thing that I really appreciated about training with Hayden that you wouldn't necessarily think about is the lack of competitiveness that we actually have with each other. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he's a triathlete and I'm a runner. And so in trainings, we don't necessarily race each other, but we benefit each other to get the session done and make it a little easier on ourselves. Whereas like when you're just training with a bunch of runners, you can often just like race them in training, in all your trainings. And then you can get carried away and dig yourself a hole. And so I think that Craig, there is times that we definitely do race each other a little bit, naturally. But it's Craig manages us well in that sense. And so we definitely maximize each training session. But yeah, he's a great mate. It's been really hard to be away from him a little more than I'd like to this year. But our time will come and we might meet up in Europe again next year, which would be pretty awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. But he's an awesome dude and great training partner.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think you bring up a really good point just about having, first of all, a training buddy. I think you might agree with me that when you schedule to meet someone for a session, it just makes it a little bit easier to actually get to that session, and you almost have a little bit more of a positive attitude going into it, which then again helps that performance. So having a training buddy is really, really important. How do you cope? Because obviously, do you have many training buddies if Hayden's not there? Do you run with many people during the week, or is it basically just you and the session that Craig sort of puts in front of you?
Well, Craig's got a stable of athletes that meet together on a Saturday morning. And so our Saturday morning sessions, there'll be people there, people around. And recently, because he's just kind of been doing like low end threshold or slower tempo, almost like sub-tempo paces, I've been able to run with a bunch of the juniors. And so I'll do, 3 reps with a bunch of his juniors as in like 18-year-olds. Or 16, 18-year-olds. And so I do a couple of reps with them, and then I'll do one by myself while they sit out, and then they'll jump back in and we'll do some more reps together and stuff like that. And so that's been really fun for a Saturday. But most of my workouts at the moment, when Hayden isn't here, most of my workouts are solo. which I don't mind as well. Like I look at it as like character building a little bit, like if you can push by yourself, then when it comes to racing, you're not afraid to take the front. Whereas if you're training in a line on a train all the time, then you're just going to be, maybe a little weaker. I don't know. But I have a couple of mates who I run with quite regularly, just for my regular runs, which is pretty awesome. The likes of another triathlete, Lachlan Haycock. He's a really good mate of mine, and Josiah Nay is another one of Craig's athletes who I run with. Actually, he's also a triathlete. So for some reason, I'm surrounded with triathletes, which is great, and I love them. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. I think it's nice to know that you've got that real mix of being able to train by yourself, and you've got a stable of athletes to hook into to do sessions as well. So it sounds really healthy. It sounds really healthy.
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, yeah, another thing I wouldn't mind touching on as well is I've had a few questions from a few people to try to ask you. One question was that I'd love you to cover off. They felt that this one person wanted to ask you how you felt about your Tokyo experience, because they felt that you've had better results before and after, and then Tokyo maybe didn't go to plan. And what do you put that down to? And is that your take on it as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. Tokyo as a whole was a crazy experience because of the whole COVID thing.
Right.
But so I think a lot of Olympians who had been to Tokyo before, been to the Olympics before, may have struggled to kind of thrive off the atmosphere because there wasn't as much of an atmosphere as maybe previous Olympics. But I was lucky in the sense that I didn't have that to compare it to. And so there's the factor of that. And then, I don't know, yeah, I raced really well in February. And then I think there was one mistake that I made in the year leading up to Tokyo was just the amount of racing that I had done. I raced in November when I started my season in 2020. And in December, I raced one, and then I ran 3:36 in January, 3:34, and this was at home in January solo, and 3:34 indoors in February. And then March, I had indoors, NCAA indoors. April, I had, I guess, the start of outdoors. I had maybe a little month and like a 3 weeks or 2 weeks in April to build a bit of a base. But at that stage, you've got your aerobic base, and then you've got your anaerobic, line and on the graph. You've got to build this up and then build this up, and this comes down, and naturally this one was just going to keep coming back down. And so I think by the time I got to the Olympics, I was a little cooked, to be honest. And so, yeah, that was definitely a struggle, but I was just trying to make the most of the opportunity I had. But the one thing if I was to say I regret something, was probably not racing aggressive enough. And that was something that I have learnt big time, and you probably would have seen it over my races this year. I've approached each race in a way more aggressive way, and in the sense that I'm like, I'm going to win this race, or I'm going to put myself in at this time. Yeah. Whereas in Tokyo, I was like just looking around going, oh my goodness, look at the company I'm in. This is incredible. Yeah. And so I was, just over the moon with where I was at. But it was a cool experience, but yeah, maybe a little bit underwhelming on the performance side. I would have liked to make the semi-final at least, but it's okay. I was just, how can you be disappointed when people give up their whole life to make it to the Olympics? And, I was 20 and I was at the Olympics. And so I was like, I have no right to be ungrateful for where I'm at. So I was just stoked.
Yeah, look, that's a great answer. And again, just a beautiful attitude, Sam. I think, the lens that you see things through is just so refreshing, and something that I think more people need to take away, because you're absolutely right. You're an Olympian. And that's just so exciting. And I think, what you learned from the Olympics following the races, you really did race with more confidence. And I don't know, that feeling of like, I belong. You raced so well following that. And so again, you just took the lessons and moved forward in a really positive way. So it's just, really, really lovely to hear. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up is I'm not sure if you can remember, in 2016, you raced your first 10K at Mount Maunganui. Can you remember your mum coming up to me and saying, hey, it's Sam's first 10K. Can you look after him? And can you remember what happened next?
I can remember that, actually. We stood at the start line together right next to each other, and then Yeah, then we started the race. Actually, you can tell the story because I enjoy hearing it from your perspective.
Yeah, well, and I've told this story several hundred times to anyone that will listen, but basically we started off running about 3:30-minute K pace, and I was, at my absolute limit. And after about 2K, you and I were leading the race by a fair way. Andy Vane was in third behind us, and
Yep.
and I couldn't talk. I was, and you were just sort of this little 14-year-old just bobbing along beside me. I could just see your mop of hair sort of down almost waist height as you're there, and then you sort of looked up at me and you went, "Hey, Brad, are we running fast enough, Brad?" And I can remember looking at you going, "Sam, I think we are." Like, I couldn't even talk, and then you just went, "Oh, I think I might just go up the road a bit. I just think I might just see if I can, just see what's going." And you just took off. This little 14-year-old kid just took off and destroyed me. And that was your first time ever racing 10K. So that was my perspective. And you basically just took off and won the race by almost a couple of minutes.
I was a cocky little kid. I apologize for that. I was probably like, "Oh, okay, see ya." But no, that was cool. Yeah.
So that was a big thrill for me, Sam. A big thrill for me to say, that your first 10K race, I got to run with Sam Tanner, who then just taught me a running lesson at 14. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, thanks, Brad. Appreciate that. It was pretty cool. I definitely needed to learn that, and that was the year before what was that? 2016, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. You go. Yeah, I would have been. What time of year was that? Was start of the year?
Look, I can't remember now. I think it was around the start of the year.
Yeah, I probably would have been. I think I was 15, and yeah, it was like a year, just a couple of years before I started training properly. So, yeah, obviously 10Ks for me. I've only done like 3 of them, and that was probably one of them. And so, no, that was really fun, and I love those sorts of community races too, like just local ones that get everybody involved. And there was me and you were leading that charge, and then there was a bunch of hobby joggers behind us just cruising. But no, that was such a good race, and I actually should do some more of them.
Yeah, no, yeah. Look, you're welcome anytime to come and join us, and come for a run, Sam. You're always welcome. Hey, we've got a few questions coming through. We've got Helen Brunner, who she actually lives in Invercargill down the deep south there. She's part of the Run Experience community, and she's got a question that I'm pretty keen to ask as well. She's really keen to hear about what you do for how you sort of blend in your strength training in your week, your mobility. Any sort of cross training. I'd love to hear how you sort of blend and mix that into your sort of 100K plus weeks at the moment.
Yeah, that's a good question, because that's one of the challenges I'm facing at the moment, is managing my load in the gym, and and managing the 100 plus K weeks. Excuse me. I am going to the gym 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'll start with 20 minutes of mobility, where that's mostly just hip range and active stretches, almost more like yoga style stuff, Spider-Man lunges and things, where I'm just increasing range across hips and glutes and everything else, getting it all activated. And then I do about an hour of a gym set, which I'm lucky enough to have the awesome Nick Gill, All Black strength and conditioning coach. He's written me a program, and it's really specific to me, which is amazing, because we did some testing, and so that was really, really awesome. And I'm enjoying that, and have definitely feeling the benefits of it. Surprisingly, I have the weakest carbs in the world, or had the weakest carbs in the world. And I guess I was all tendon bounce rather than actually strength of my calves, because I tried to do 20 calf raises on one single leg calf raises, couldn't even do it. And so I was like, oh, that's shocking. Wow. So he's building on that and doing that sort of stuff. But definitely a couple of niggles come up here and there, just managing the load properly and appropriately at the same time, because I could go heavy in the gym and then do 2 hard workouts in a week. And then, my body's like, oh, that's a little much, or So it's just balancing that line the best I can. But then on the other days that I'm not in the gym, Craig has put like 30 minutes of mobility in there, and just in the training peaks that we use. And so I just crank through a little bit of a circuit there, I guess, which is kind of cool. Again, kind of more yoga style, mobility, strength kind of positions, which is really, really fun. And I enjoy that. It just adds something else for me to do in my day, really, because when you run, what do you do? So it's your time. So I, enjoy getting on stuff like this with you. And so that's kind of how I spend my time and the rest of it, and cook and eat and sleep.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Helen, for that question. And that was something that I definitely wanted to ask. And that brings into another question about how much rest you have to do as a professional runner. Now, I see people like Jakob Ingebrigtsen, who's out there training, and then he just spends his time lying down, watching YouTube and chilling out. And is that sort of what you do as well, or do you try to mix in a little bit of sort of active relaxation with the surfing and things like that? How do you balance your rest, with the training, and how does that affect your performance?
It affects my performance in different ways. Some days I'll go fishing for 4 hours, and in some ways that's active relaxation, and other ways should be sleeping, lying down, like on a bed. And so that's definitely a thing that I am working on. But my toss up is between, am I balancing out my life by doing the things I love, whether it be fishing or surfing or my cross training activities, or focusing fully on running and sleeping. And so this is like almost like you've got the two beasts. You got Jakob Ingebrigtsen and then me. And it was actually really funny. I talked to him after the Lausanne Diamond League, and I told him what my training looks like, and he's like, I said, I'm only running like 100 Ks a week, 110 Ks a week. And he's like, oh my goodness, like you might be the most talented 1500 meter runner here. And he's like, I've been running twice a day, every day since I was 12 years old. And I'm like, whoa, like those are words directly from his mouth. Like that's crazy. And we further down our conversation, I was saying, what are you going to do after the off season, and what you're going to spend your time doing? And my off season was 6 days of just surfing every day. And I just maximized that by just surfing every day. And he said he gets 2 weeks of just 10 Ks every day. And I'm like,
wow,
what? Like that's his off week, like his off season. And I'm like, that's crazy. But it was pretty eye-opening to see, what his balance looks like and my balance looks like. Completely different things. So I think that's, you got to take that into account as an individual and an athlete. And for me, going surfing and stuff is important sometimes, and other times I have to like back off and say, actually, my body's had a lot of stress on it this week, and I just gotta, I got to go for a walk on the beach with Melissa, my wife. And so that's what I spend a lot of my time doing now, especially in these heavier weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting. That's a really interesting story, and I think it just shows the difference between someone like yourself and Jakob, but you do have to take the individuality into account. And I think a lot of people will just look at Jakob and think, right, that's how I've got to train, and then blow up and break themselves, when it's like, he's a special case. And you can't just copy and paste someone else's training regime into yours because it's successful for someone else. You have to figure out you. And that's, I think, one of your gifts, Sam, is you know who you are. You've known who you are for a while. And I think that's it's a fantastic strength in you, and so you're able to then have some direction with your training and really make it your own, and that's why it's working so well for you. So that's really fantastic. I also wanted to bring up a little bit about, I suppose, your sort of goals and plans. You're saying that 2024 Paris is out there. That's kind of what you want to look for doing. Are you able to share with us your sort of goals for that? Do you have stuff written down? Are you a guy that writes stuff down and has it plastered in the mirror every time you get up and do a little bit of David Goggins looking into the mirror and making sure that you're doing that? Or, how do you approach your goals?
No, I don't like. I write some goals down. Usually once a season, I'll sit down with Craig and kind of write down stuff we want to achieve. But I definitely don't. I'm not as committed as some people to write them in the mirror and with like Sharpie or not Sharpie, like whiteboard marker or something like that, or on a sticky note or anything. I kind of just like I got it in the back of my head and I'll almost forget about it, but like it'll be like the silent motivator behind everything I do to get me to where I achieve or what I want to achieve. And then after I achieve it or get close to it, then it'll almost pop back up in my head. Like I told my mate when I was 12 years old that I wanted to go to the Olympics, and I had not remembered that at all. Couldn't even remember for the life of me trying to tell him that. And anyway, after the Olympics, he told me, I remember you when you were 12 and said that you're going to go to the Olympics. And I'm like, wow. And so, there's those sorts of things that are like driving me. But anyway, specifically, I've got my eyes on a couple of New Zealand records. I want to get Nick's 1500 run, and then John Walker's mile. And those are two massive goals. But it'll just come down to the right race. I think I'm going to be in shape if everything plans out nicely and how I think it should. Then I think I'll be in shape to run those sorts of times. But it's a 1500 and it's a mile. Who knows what's going to happen? Anything could happen. And so, we'll see how the season goes. But those are my two big ones for next year. And then Paris, I'd love to get a medal, and that's always been my dream. So I've been pretty vocal about that. But speak it into existence, right?
Absolutely.
Power and declaration, absolute power and declaration. I reckon.
Yeah, no, I love it, Sam. That's just so exciting. Look, we've only got another sort of 5-10 minutes left on the chat. So anybody that's watching and wants to ask a question, put it in now, and we'll put it to Sam before he has to get off and do some more recovery. But that's really exciting. The other thing is that you mentioned earlier in this conversation that when you're in that really fast race, you sort of said a little prayer. Your faith is a big part of your life, obviously. So how's your faith sort of worked in with your progression as a runner? How's that sort of worked in?
I've always had a big part in going to Curate, my local church down here, and I think that's another part of like my balance that comes into life. Like for me, I know that everybody has their thing that they do to like calm them down or get them ready to race, and for me, I'm like, I just find a lot of peace in knowing that that God's in control and that the Lord's got control of my life. And I try not to my biggest thing is that I know who I am because I'm a child of God, not a child, and I'm not. I don't let my identity be wrapped up in my sport. And so I always tell people, they always tell me like, "Oh, you're Sam the runner," and I'm like, "No. I'm actually Sam who runs. I'm not Sam the runner." Because as soon as running gets taken away from my identity, if I got wrapped up in it, I'd be like, "Oh, who am I? Oh, I'm like this lost headless chicken running around with like, And so I'm like, that's probably been one of the biggest things. I'm like, I know who I am because I have a Father who's created me, and he's given me a plan for my life. And so I find a lot of peace and comfort in the fact that I can just relax into his plan, and I don't actually, I'm like, I've got control over it, but at the same time I'm like, I can just make the best decisions I can with what I've got. But then ultimately his hands guiding, my feet and my path, and I'm feeling this favor every day. So I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a really nice way of explaining that, and I think it's just a beneficial thing that you have to have that faith and to understand that you're part of something bigger, and you just playing your part and being the best example possible, of someone who's just out there enjoying life and grateful for what they have. So that's fantastic. Now, before we go, I think it's really important. I'd love you just to give some advice to some of those runners just starting out. So, if there's a runner watching this and they're just sort of starting out, what's 3 big tips from Sam Tanner in terms of how they start out running and how they progress things?
All right. 3 tips. The 3 key things for me to progress would be, the first one would be consistency. And so you got to, the consistency, load management, and I'll think of the first one, but these 2 kind of tie into each other. The third one, I'll think of, these 2 kind of tie into each other. I think, as I've said, like, you got to manage your load in such a way that you can see yourself getting better in 4 years. There's a reason why there's an Olympic cycle, because athletes peak for that Olympic cycle. They do 4 years of training and then they peak for the Olympic cycle. And each year they get better and faster and stronger. And so progression and load management is really important. But if you manage your load wrong, your consistency goes out the window. And so that's actually the biggest thing, and the biggest thing that has worked for me. And I know it has worked for Jakob, and I know it has worked for all the best runners in the world. It's just like managing to put years on top of years on top of years of like as little injuries and little major injuries as possible, so that you can just get week after week after week. Like, it doesn't even matter if your weeks are pathetically small, like as long as you're just slowly building on that. And so, yeah, consistency, load management, and enjoyment. That's no brainer. If you aren't enjoying it, then change it and find a way to enjoy it. Whether that's running on the beach in bare feet, which I do in summertime, and that actually gives me the benefit of having strong ligaments and strong feet. And so I find huge benefit in that. So not everybody has to do that, but that's something that brings me enjoyment out of running, in a way that I really enjoy, getting close to nature and making the most of running, because I know running can be a bit tedious or monotonous, just leg, foot, step, and so, yeah, finding a buddy, doing whatever it takes to just enjoy the most of where you are and outside, and getting outside and doing everything like that. There's just those 3 important things for me.
Yeah, that's gold. That's gold. And we just had one of our coaches at the Run Experience put out a video on consistency. Dan put a video out on consistency, and he basically echoed just that. It's just so important just to be consistent, and just to make sure that load management is taken care of, because if you do too much too soon, then you get injured and then you break that consistency. And then also having joy wrapped up in that. Joy is so powerful, and if you're not enjoying it, as you say, change something. You've got to just have a little sit down with yourself, a little powwow, and go, hey, wait a minute, I need to change something. Find another place to run, find a training partner. But I think that's absolutely gold, And I think you've answered. There's a question that's been put up: what motivates you to run daily and to run? And I think you've sort of answered that, haven't you? But what's one thing? What's some other, maybe some things that motivate Sam Tanner that you haven't sort of talked about so far? Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
What motivates me? Sometimes I'm pretty unmotivated. I got to be honest. Like, sometimes you can never always be like on top of the world. I want to get this run done, especially when your body's feeling pretty sore. And so sometimes it's like, okay, I know I have to do this run and stay motivated because I have a goal that's in mind, and every little bit counts. If you stack those miles up, you're stacking up strength, you're stacking up endurance. And so for me, like, getting out and just getting out the door, that motivates me. Like, as soon as I step out the door, I'm like, okay, I'm good. The hard part's over. I'm like, I don't care how hard the workout is, how much I have to hurt. I'm like, I can go into the well and just be in the box and hurting. But, in some ways that motivates me, and that makes me a little crazy, but that's fine. I get paid to do it. So it's what it is. But yeah, those are kind of, get outside, have set goals, find little things that motivate you. But those are the things that motivate me. And I guess the money in some ways too motivates you. There's like bonuses in my contract, and so I got to try to get them, make a living for myself at least, because there's not, heaps of money in my sport, especially being in New Zealand. But yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's awesome, Sam. And I think, again, mentioning the fact that sometimes you're not motivated, I think it's really good for people to hear, because I think it's a bit of a myth where people think, oh, you've got to be motivated, search for motivation. I've written a little bit about this. Is sometimes you just need discipline. Sometimes you just need to schedule it in, and then the motivation will be fed from that action following discipline. And a lot of people get it the wrong way around. They wait for motivation to strike before they get into a plan. When you know what? Just do the hard mahi, just schedule it in, get out of bed and get out the door, and then the motivation can feed from there. So I think you've hit the nail on the head. And it's so refreshing to hear that from someone like yourself, because if an Olympian sometimes struggles with motivation but gets it done, then it's a really good lesson for the rest of us. The rest of us, we need to sometimes understand that motivation isn't there 24/7, and sometimes you have to feed it with action and with discipline. So that's awesome. Really awesome. And another part of that question from one of our viewers was your nutrition. What is it? Give us a daily nutrition rundown. What does Sam Tanner eat in a day to fuel his Olympic ambitions?
All right. It changes. I love food. Melissa loves food, and so we cook a bunch of different stuff. Dinners can look anything like fish poke bowls, which is a common one for us, or mince wraps. Sometimes if we're trying to save some money, and we'll do like a chickpea mince instead, like a vegan mince, vegetarian mince. But then, find your protein, other sources, and do a bunch of different stuff. So it's a big mix. And then we'll do, what's another common one we'll do eskendas, like homemade eskendas. So just like chicken or rice with a bunch of vegetables, chopped up, and a couple of homemade sauces and things. That's a good one. But so that's kind of a brief little rundown of dinners. And then you can't forget the classic sausages and roasties. That's a New Zealand classic, so can't do that one. And then summertime, we have a lot of pizza, like pizza oven, pizza in the backyard. And so just like homemade pizza is that one. Okay, and so then we got like breakfasts. I am a big smoothie guy, so we'll either do smoothie bowls, where it'd be like a green smoothie with banana, cucumber, spinach, celery, some mango. That'd be one smoothie, and then we just put some granola or something on top of it. So that'd be like a pre-run meal, usually just some quick energy for me, easy processing, energy. Then post-run snacks, I'll usually smash some yogurt with granola and peanut butter, something like that. Baking, we often make. I'm giving you the whole life thing right now.
Sounds awesome, man. I just want to come around to eat.
I know, it's so good. That's my favorite part about being an athlete. I can eat so much all the time. It's great. And so, we make banana chocolate chip muffins all the time, which is just delicious. And we smash through so many bananas. But yeah, what do lunches look like? Lunches can be anything from like a Mexican, like Uncle Ben's rice and like tortillas, because it's easy. You just get your tortilla wrap or wraps and just chuck it in the toasty maker and some cheese, and then chuck some avo and stuff on there, or whether it be bacon and eggs on toast after a run, or there you go. There's a bit of a rundown of what I eat in a day.
Yeah, it sounds good. I reckon you and your wife need to maybe create a Kiwiana cookbook and just put it out there, mate. I think it would go well. I think it would go well.
Right, we'll do that.
Yeah. Hey, just before we go, we've got just another question from Helen, and I think you alluded to this earlier in the conversation. Do you take a break at all during the year? So with your year periodized out, when do you have a break, and how long is it?
This year I had a break, but it was kind of like a week or two of off running, not as much. I had 6 days off running, this year. Excuse me. And then I got back into running very, very slowly. So I would do 20 or 30-minute runs a couple times a week, just broken up for a couple weeks. And so that would be like my break. But I'm a bit of a crazy man and I want to get stuff done and be doing stuff all the time. And so that's really the reason behind it. If Craig knew that I was the person who needed like 2 weeks or 3 weeks off or a month off, then he'd give me a month off and just do that. But I'm like, I want to stay on top of it and keep training because I just love it. And I didn't feel too burnt out after this year. And so that's, I think, a definite like benefit of, or I guess blessing in disguise. Like sometimes you finish a year and you're like totally drained and you need a month. But yeah, it'll be after my major championships when I'll take the break, leading into the winter of the next year or the build up for the next year.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. Hey, look, it's just ticked over an hour. So, we better let you go, Sam. You better go do some mobility work. Make sure you stick to Craig's training schedule.
Yeah.
But it's been awesome chatting with your brother. As you know, we here in the Bay of Plenty are incredibly proud of you. And the whole of Aotearoa is totally behind you and your goals for the next few years. So thank you so much for joining the Run Experience and answering some cool questions and just giving some real nuggets there for our running community. I really enjoy just your whole attitude. The lens that you see things through is refreshing, and there's so much that we can take from, especially the consistency and just having joy meshed up with what you do. And you are a consummate example of that, and such a professional in what you do. So thank you so much. And I can't wait to catch up with you personally soon for a run or maybe even a meal. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
It does sound good. But it's been a real pleasure. So thank you so much. Anything to add before you go?
No, I think we've covered off a good chunk of information there. But thanks so much for having me, and really enjoyed chatting to you. And yeah, we'll definitely catch up for a meal and a run. How about we do that?
Ooh, now you're talking. That's
Yeah,
awesome, mate. Yeah,
we'll
so thanks, Sam. Really appreciate it. You enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right, cheers, Brad. Yeah, you too, mate. See you later.
So yeah, thanks, mate.